A very, very good afternoon, and welcome to the Migration and Climate Change seminar series here at the School of Global Development at the University of East Anglia. My name is Dr. Ritika Subramanian, and I co convene this seminar series with Professor Nitya Rao and Dr. Mark Tebbit as part of the Successful Intervention Pathways for Migration as Adaptation Research Consortium, which is supported by the FCDO and IDRC under the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Program. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our speaker, Professor Tasneem Siddiqui, who is also a key member of our research consortium. Professor Siddiqui is the acting executive director of the Refugee and Migratory Movements Research Unit, which is a leading Bangladesh based migration think tank, and is also a former professor and chairperson of the Department of Political Science at the University of Dhaka. A pioneer in migration research, she has published more than 100 works on on labor migration, remittances, and climate and disaster related mobility, and is one of the most widely cited social science scholars in Bangladesh. Over to you, Tasneem.
Thank you very much. I'll be speaking on climate change induced displacement in Bangladesh and the National Strategy 2021 that Bangladesh government has framed. So we all know millions of people are internally displaced annually in the context of disaster and climate change in Bangladesh. Now, migration has to be one of the most important action in ensuring human existence. Because if someone's home is already gone into water, there is no other way that this is the human existence, ensuring human existence through movement. So a large section of displaced individuals remain in precarious conditions for years, sometimes even for decades, in their new place of residence. Now, this brings me to the eternal debate: can migration in the context of climate change be an adaptation strategy? So this is what we are going to look into, because what we argue, and also this whole success project, that is also we are looking into how, in what condition migration can be a successful adaptation venture, and in other what conditions it can not. So if I just define what is displacement, that persons, group of persons, households, or entire community who have been forced or obliged to flee or to leave their home or place of residence temporarily or permanently, or who have been evacuated as a result of disaster caused by sudden and slow onset climate events and processes, and who have not crossed an internationally recognized state border. That is the peninsular principles. Both slow onset and rapid onset processes contribute to displacement and successive movement. So this particular session, what we are looking into, as I have said, the government of Bangladesh adopted a national strategy on displacement management to address the challenges of internal displacement. Our aim of this session is to understand the potential of the national strategy in reducing precarious existence of the displaced men, women, elderly, and children, both in place of origin and destination. Now, conceptual understanding, if we try to look at displacement and we are thinking whether their existence are what makes the people more vulnerable in the context of climate change. Like what we conceptually we are basing our discussion is that anthropogenic climate change affects most of the community, yet socioeconomic inequality makes marginal groups more vulnerable to it. Through migration, economically and socially resourceful households can adapt better compared to those who take part in migration from a pre-existing, precarious, situation. So this is where we are concentrating. In their new places of residence, they may reduce some aspects of their precarity, yet in many other areas, their precarious existence continues or new types of precarity may emerge. What is precarity? We are like concentrating on our research that we have done in the 2019-20, 19 and 20, where we have, the definitions we already have, that some have said that instability, lack of security, and presence of social and economic vulnerability in diverse economies are seen by Rogers as, precarious work condition. Then Standing looks at precarity as an emerging class characterized by insecurity across three crucial domains: labor, income, and rights. Now, White highlights exclusion from public welfare and struggle for recognition as central to the existence of the precarity. Methodology based on which I am making this presentation. We have done quite a few research that I have highlighted here. These are mostly quantitative as well as qualitative, but this presentation mostly depends on the qualitative research findings, and that research findings is mostly through Photovoice research. So what you are seeing here is the photographs. Photovoice research entails the participants are given camera and they are asked to take photographs which will help them to tell us what are their problems in the new destination or where they have moved and resettled in the same village. So they take photographs and then they elicitate those photos by saying why this particular picture, what do they mean by it, and whatever they say, we write it down. That is what you are seeing here. So this is the conceptual standing that precarity exists in new locations of migration. Therefore, migration can be successful adaptation, but may not be successful adaptation for some others. So in that case, that is the conceptual scenario. Now, I would like to take you through some global figures now of displacement that will put us into the situation that displacement is a major problem in the context of climate change. 216 million people may get displaced by 2050 if right kind of protection measures are not taken. Like in South Asia, 40 million will be displaced out of this 216. And of this 40 million, 19 million will be displaced only in Bangladesh. So that says in case of Bangladesh, why displacement management is a big issue. Again, so this is slow onset processes. When you go into rapid onset processes, you see global placed in 2024. This particular table, what you see that since 2015 to 2024, due to rapid onset climate change processes, people are displaced temporarily. Some of them go to their place of origin. Some of them cannot go to their places of origin. Okay, so you can see in 2024, it is very high. Displacement is very high. But I must say, it could be because now more and more data keeping system is developing. That is why we are seeing more and more numbers. So now I will just show you, these are the 5 countries reporting the highest figures last year. You can see who is there. United States is there, Philippines is there, India is there, China is there, Bangladesh is there. Last year in India was the third largest, country where displacement took place. Now, what is very important, that displacement can be reduced. Displacement can be reduced. Who says so? UNFCCC Technical Guide to Integrate Human Mobility, Sendai Framework, Cancun Adaptation Framework, even Groundswell report. Everyone says that 80% of the displacement can be reduced. The photos I'm showing here, these are all taken by people who have been displaced, and it is their photo. They wanted to, like the photo that you see in the bottom, it is a healthcare center. It's gone in water. So their healthcare, precarity they wanted to show. And then in in hill areas, how they stay, and when landslide takes place, how they are affected, they wanted to highlight that to us. So if you can reduce, displacement, then there has to be certain programs, times, and people. These pictures showing you when we were doing, and the where we did, how many male, how many female, these we have given. Now, given the Photovoice research, what are we getting? We have here bringing in experience from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas. One is urban, two is urban, and rest are rural areas. Padmapukur, Ramgati, Noria, these are all urban, rural areas where displacement took place, and they moved into rural areas. And in Chattogram city and in Kuala, one is peri-urban and one is urban location. So what you will see, the reality of people varies according to geographic location. People who are in the urban locations, their precarity, their challenges of resettling in new areas are different than those who are in the rural areas. Now, if we look into livelihood challenges, if you see, it is different in Ramgati. In Padmapukur, it's again different. No? In Ramgati, they used to produce soybean. They cannot, fishing trawlers and other things are, taken in cyclones. So these are the problem in Ramgati. So if you see even about, health related problems, you will see it's different in different locations. So therefore, what we are saying, that precarity in respect to health, in respect to gender, in respect to, location, they all vary. If you think of those who are living in hill areas and those who are living in plain land, there is a difference. As I have told you earlier in some of the, sessions, that with the ethnic community, when they move, maybe their religious or their other institutions, spiritual area, place for convocation, those things are not available in new locations. But those who move from Muslim background, they automatically get those facilities. So therefore, hill people's need is different than people who are in plain land. Gender differences, I think Nitya will be very much interested. Gender differences are quite strong. If you see, women usually in our different areas, homestead loss is seen as a major problem by women, whereas loss of arable land was seen as a problem for men. So it is different what they, and then again, women across all economic classes identified access to relief. the situation where these people reside, there are cyclones or waterlogging, something is there. Men don't face problem in accessing relief or going into shelters, no? But women do face problem in accessing relief and going into shelter, like carrying potable water from distant areas in the aftermath of disaster are, you know, diseases which are waterborne, skin diseases, and particularly cancer for women in uterus because of in Shatkhira area, because they stay in salty water, saline water situation. So this is very much the reproductive health problem in Shatkhira areas. But maybe other area won't mention more about skin waterborne diseases. Now, men identify lack of access to loan. They want, after when they need to recover, they want loan, so they don't have collateral. So these are their problem. Again, what is the major problem for different groups? If you ask them to identify the major problem, top concerns for women: lack of privacy while bathing, long queues in using toilet in urban location, sexual harassment, lack of childcare facilities. These are their problem in urban location. Men, when you ask, precarious work condition, lack of tenure of job, fluctuating income, police harassment, eviction will be their major problem. Children getting wet while coming and going to school, waterlogging, absence of playground, power cut during study time. These are their problem. Okay. Now you have 99.5% electricity coverage all over Bangladesh. But even then, power cut is a major thing, particularly in the areas where, slum and other areas, it's a major problem. Under this situation, what Bangladesh government did, they developed this national strategy. This national strategy is like on internal displacement management. Now, this strategy, when it was prepared, it took quite a long time. And it is based on the UN guiding principles, the Sendai Framework, Nansen principles, and the Sustainable Development Goals. The framework that Bangladesh adopted, it is prevention, intervention to reduce displacement, intervention in 3 phases. Prevention, you can protect people from displacement, from being displaced, if you do preventive measures. Preventive measures are infrastructure development and, forestation, then tree planting and other things. And in 1/4 cost, you can reduce displacement. Then when a disaster takes place, after that, you want to rehabilitate them. Second stage we discuss is the protection during displacement. When people are displaced during the time in these cyclone shelters, while going to cyclone shelters, just after, in the type of support you require, that is protection during displacement. Again, here as well, men, women, as we have seen, that different types of problem. So different type of solution for these two groups. And the last thing is durable solution. Durable solution refers to addressing displacement when they are returning to their places of origin after any disaster, after any, after losing their homestead, they're coming back. And second is local integration. When a person moved from one area and went to another area and tried to resettle there, that another area can be a close by village and peri-urban area, or could be mega cities. So again, our studies show from their place of origin, Some even moved 14 times before going to main megacity. But on an average, they have moved 3 times. Any interviewees that we are, at least 3 times they have moved. When we are talking about prevention, data, understanding risk, and then generating data all over the world, data on displacement is very scarce. And these are, every country has their own mechanism or understanding displacement, but there is no standardized data and there is no data, in fact. It's more estimates, guesstimates. So then this has 5 core elements in prevention, which talks about strengthening the governance of displacement, then integration of DRR, CCA, and SDG, climate finance, including Green Fund. With those, if you come up with prevention plans, that's there. And then when you can displace population, either you can take them into somewhere or they themselves can go to some other places. Main problem is livelihood and employment. So employment creation and giving them access to employment is the major sort of hurdle. And again, the type of employment they get is land use plan that is provided because these people and emerges, they have the right to get the first priority. But in many cases, they never apply for that. They don't know the registration system. So that's why land use plan is very important in the context of Bangladesh. So if there is a plan, then people can know, and people, if they are made aware, so then they can apply and they can recover their lands, what they have lost. Now, protection, as I have said, these are the phases during displacement. And again, their fundamental rights is a major issue, and humanitarian disaster relief is the other 2 issue. So you have around 30 here, 48 targets here, and then in the durable solution, return, local integration, and planned relocation, you do have another 32 targets. When you have a national strategy, it may not be implemented unless you have a action plan. So there is an action plan. You can see government has an action plan. It's you can see from 22 to 42. It's a 20-year action plan, and it has a step-by-step, mechanism to understand the action plan. Key targets are taken from the national strategy, and then proposed activities are there. Then lead line ministry and agency who should be doing it, how NGOs should be participating in this, and other ministries will cooperate. Then set indicators or monitor progress that is there, and later on the 6th, the time frame. If I have to conclude, what I would like to conclude, that we have seen precarious work condition, we have health, then we identified labor condition, we identified geographical location, and that problem of, so these we have identified. So earlier studies which studied precarity in the context of labor condition, decent work, etc., our research will broaden and has broadened the horizon of migrants' experience of precarity from only material or labor precarity to non-material determinants of precarity, which are health, education, social relationship, systematic exclusion, and invisibility. So now when we are looking at precarity in success, we are looking at it from a much broader perspective, and well-being we are bringing into the discussion. Precarity and well-being is the other component that we are bringing in. The experience of precarity, again, as I have argued, is not same for all migrants. It varies according to age, gender, sex, ethnicity, disability, religious orientation, and geographic locations of the migrants. What we are saying that we have talked about research-wise what we are finding. Now, national strategy-wise, what we are concluding that, making national strategy or action plan, it is not easy. It took quite sometimes, but implementation is much harder. Implementation is even harder. So you can see only few components of the national strategies being implemented in Bangladesh. Only few components. And resource allocation, particular resource allocation through revenue budget, it's poor. We are not getting things here. And we have, after the national strategy, a national adaptation plan was redesigned again, and that national adaptation plan didn't bother to incorporate this national strategy. Why? Because either they are, to them, adaptation, climate change, it is other things, not migration. So even though we have over and over told them, and what at the end, after writing this, they told us that actually we don't know migration much, so we didn't that. So you can see how, even within different policies, different strategies, integration is difficult. Even I was in the, COP30 this time, and what we did, it's the two ministries of the government, Environment Ministry and Disaster Ministry. They, took a template. Sorry, I have to explain a little. A template has been prepared for CVF states. CVF are Climate Vulnerable Forum states. Now we have 74 CVF states. And CVF states, after seeing at our national strategy, requested our government to prepare a template. Based on that template, the 74 country, the secretariat, CVF country secretariat will push for framing national strategy and action plan. So that template has been prepared, and then under the Ministry of Disaster. Now, Ministry of Disaster and Ministry of Environment took and launched that in COP30 and handed that over to the Secretary General and Director General of CVF states. Now, CVF states are now, this is a great success, I would say, not in Bangladesh that much, but if you think about, replication of the strategy, even in 10 countries, if it is replicated, that's a big success. And what we have done, it is through success. We have taken this to COP. So when it was presented and its success was placed there in the COP30, wherein this was placed, and now that their government, now that they are planning first meeting in Philippines to sit with the countries of Asia Pacific to introduce this template to them so that they can try to replicate. So that's there at a global level. But at national level, Green Fund, access to Green Fund, Climate Bridge Fund, Bangladesh couldn't access. And again, it is the CVF forum states, they are saying that we will make this displacement strategy by accessing Green Climate Fund, Climate Change Fund, and loss and damage fund. So that way, globally, it is progressing. I'll just say that this type of research, the qualitative information that it brings through Photovoice, that's a very good way of understanding the precarity, the well-being I didn't discuss here. Maybe in another presentation, another time, we can discuss the well-being aspects, what they liked about the new location and why they would like to stay in new locations. And even in the new location, why they would like to move to some other place for better education, for better schooling and other things. So those things will come. Another, this is very much like a to understand the national strategy. Why? What are the issues it highlighted? So we brought in the precarity discussion. So I will stop here. Thank you very much.
So thanks a lot. There are a couple of questions coming in. I think the first one is from Wafi, which says that is actually about the photo voice. Tasneem says, I'm quite curious about the photo voice data collection technique. Could you please explain a bit more? Why was it
Okay.
selected? And what was
Yes.
its advantage over other qualitative methods?
As you have seen, that photo voice, it's research you are giving to the participants, those who are taking part, those who are really evicted from the place. When we go there with questionnaire, we have our structured sort of mind, and then we want to look into our issues, no? And what theoretically we want to see these. But when it is photo voice, it is the people who have been evicted or who have been displaced. They are the one, they decide what is their challenge and how do they want to solve it. So that is why I think I like photo voice research very much. And then again, it's not a passive researcher, a passive participation of answering to questions by the participants. What they do, like it's a very much we have a guidebook we can share with you all how to do photo voice research. That's where first you have to do a lot of work. You have to come up with what are the issues that you are thinking and who are your participants and how do you select the participants. It's not that anyone you go and they'll be able to say. So what we do usually from quantitative research, that from there different type of issues already emerge. So based on those issues, those areas which want to further study, we select and there we go. And after going there, from the quantitative research, we have, you know, people who have certain kind of experiences. So we select them and then we train them about what are we wanting and how we want you to speak out. And you will have this camera for 2 weeks and you take photo whatever you want, but at the end you have to elicitate those photos to us. And that's what they do. Like there are 2 or 3 workshops. First, the workshop is with 100 photos. They take 100 and 150 photos. So from there, why have you taken these photos? Then ask them to choose 10. And then from 10, you explain that 10. And then after explaining, we write it down everything and then ask them, okay, then take another 5 from there. Don't reduce them into another 5. What will be your most important issue and what will be the most important issue? So that's how we proceed in photo voice research. And it it is like researchers take a back seat and those who are being part of your research, they take the front seat. And why this research we have chosen? Because it gives voice to their voice. And how they give their voice? Because we always take what they're saying to the policymakers. So policymakers have their preconceived notion about how to resolve climate change related displacement. And when they hear their opinion, they also somehow appreciate, and people, they also appreciate the shortcomings of the government or the local level government functionaries. So therefore, a synergy emerges, and that synergy actually is helpful for writing the paper, coming up. And then when you have this type of interaction, you do policy change. You do in the local areas, policymakers become sensitized and they try to do small things. And that small thing actually brings in big changes. Like I can tell you one recent, very recent one, like in the displaced population in Satkira, when we did it with training centers, government training centers, they were saying who are their client, what do they train, and then there are these displaced people who never got chance to participate in these skill center trainings. So when we put them together, when these people talk, now in Satkira district, a policy change, local level policy change, where the TTC now made it mandatory that any training course they offer will have to have 5 displaced persons in the training, member from displaced household. So it has an opportunity to policy change. That's why I like it, this method a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Tasneem. Maybe we just have time for one other question, and that is from Stephanie, who says, why is policy change important? So it's quite a fundamental question. Why is policy change important? But I just wanted to add also, Tasneem, when you're responding, I think Bangladesh has actually done very well on policy change. And as you said, the problem is with implementation. But maybe if you could say a little bit about that. Is it about, because we know that a lot of the adaptation money actually comes from the communities themselves, because of survival issues they have to adapt, and budgets are always short. But could you say a little bit about why, despite having a very good policy and a very good action plan, uh, there are still shortcomings in terms of implementation? We have about 3 or 4 minutes to conclude, Tasneem.
Okay. So, yeah, why policy change? Because once policy change is done, then local level NGOs can do advocacy for finance. Advocacy, they develop programs. So, after we did this policy, in different parts, when we trained NGOs, now NGOs are coming up with small scale programs. Maybe government is not allocating big research, but then government is also implementing a little bit by bit, particularly in the mapping, in data. Government, with the help of IOM, is implementing how to make authentic data on displacement. So policy is required to bring in changes, major changes. Maybe we don't highlight those changes, but when you have better data, that's a very important development. But whatever you want, everything doesn't happen, but few things happen. And that few things, for that also policy change is required. So it is like research, then policy advocacy, policy change, then for action by the NGOs for implementation. So I look it that way. So I'm optimistic that even few changes, I'm happy.
I just also wanted to ask you about the COP, which you were recently at. And of course, you mentioned that, about the gender part of your study, but of course, the COP this time really didn't make any progress in terms of, taking on board gender. In fact, there seems to be a slight slip backwards. So it is a bit disappointing for me. But I think from what you said, what was the most positive? I mean, I think this task force seems to have been a positive outcome.
Yeah, see, this, I was a bit, I wouldn't say disappointed, because I knew this time there is no new demand, nothing. It's like whatever was said earlier, this time it's like asking again that you didn't, the development partners didn't, provide resources what they have said. But what is, interesting, that this time they have come up with indicators, indicators, 59 indicators, how to measure adaptation. That's where gender is there. Gender-based adaptation criteria are there, which is good. Huh? And then again, the other thing is like, this is very much gender you can't see at all, is that reducing fossil fuel and with clean energy. That's where it's very much like state, government, those things. I didn't see discussion on this, fossil fuel reducing and how gender plays into it. I did not see that there. So yeah, in general, I would say this particular COP, somehow that fighting spirit was also not there, that it's very much like US was not there at all. No? So you do see certain way of somehow trying to manage. I think that type of attitude I have seen. No? Yeah.
Thank you so much. On that note, thank you very much, Tasneem, for your insights and for sharing your experiences. And despite the technical glitches, I think we did well. So thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will be back next term with the Migration Climate Change Seminar Series. And we'll also be advertising our speakers in the weeks ahead. Thank you very much once again.